because there's a lot of dangerous characters out there. But I watched this guy who was very nervous and very fidgety, and he got in line, and when he got up to where I was, before I could say anything, he said, "Worst speech ever," and then he just took off. And I figured he was a Bernie Sanders supporter or something. But I wanted to know exactly what part of my speech he didn't like, and but he got away. And then, but I watched him, and he made his way back down the side of the ballroom, and then across the back of the ballroom, and then he got back in line. He kept going. And I thought, well, maybe I'll have another opportunity to talk to him. And so I watched him as he slowly made his way up into the to the front of the room. And so I leaned in to say, what part of my speech did you like? But before I could say anything, he said, "Worst speech ever," and then just took off. Now, I'm a political cartoonist. I'm used to people abusing me.
Oh, God.
But I have to admit my feelings were getting a little bit hurt. But I watched this guy as he made his way back down the side of the ballroom, and then across the back of the ballroom, and then he cut back in line. So I thought, well, this time when he gets up, I'm gonna grab him and find out exactly what was it about my speech that he didn't like. And sure enough, he kind of made up his way up the line, and he was fidgety, and boy, he was kind of squirrely, because I reached over to grab his arm, and he went right past me, and he said, "Terrible, terrible, worst, terrible speech," and then ran off. And so my feelings were kind of hurt, and plus I couldn't even hold on to him. And so I turned to the lady next to him in line, and I said, "Have you ever seen this guy? Who is he? What is the deal with this guy?" And she said, "Oh, don't worry, that's just Crazy Larry. He's just kind of the crazy guy that hangs out at these speeches. And never mind him, he's not quite right in the head. He just repeats what everybody else says."
Oh, no.
I said, "Thank you very much. I feel so much better." A story with a twist, an element of humor to capture attention, and then the fatal blow. And essentially that's political cartooning. People give Donald Trump credit for being blunt and obnoxious. I've been blunt and obnoxious my entire career. When people ask me what is an editorial cartoonist, I always say we're kind of a hybrid. We're a cross between Edward R. Murrow, Ted Koppel, and the son of Sam. But editorial cartoons are about concept. The illustration is merely a vehicle to convey a point of view. We're here to protect and inform the public, and the public needs a lot of protecting these days. We're here to attack and repel those who do not share our long-term philosophical ideas, or even the Constitution. Basically, I like to say I get paid to be obnoxious. It's the only other profession besides dentistry where you get paid to be obnoxious. Now, some politicians will have you think that they're paid to be obnoxious. They're not paid to be, they're just obnoxious. But it's a profession about ideas. 95% of what I do is concept or pushing a particular point of view. We are the pit bulls of journalism, and we're trained to attack at the slightest provocation. We're the prosecution, pushing for a rapid conviction and an immediate execution. We are the defense, punching holes in the arguments raised against our cause. We are judge and we are jury. And since I'm not a member of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, my judgments actually make sense. Now, we stand in judgment over the issues, and the sentence that we levy is swift and harsh. So in order to be judge and jury, basically, I have the most boring job in the world. I get paid to read. And I read 3 or 4 papers a day. I read the LA Times, and I read the Orange County Register. I read Investors Business Daily, which I used to co-manage their editorial page. I also read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. A lot of people think the truth lies somewhere between the editorial pages of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. The truth lies in my cartoons. So go to michaelpramirez.com. I'm a capitalist pig. I'm a political analyst. I'm a political wonk. I read everything I can get my hands on. As a contributor, a weekly contributor to the Weekly Standard, I, of course, read that in the National Review. If I want a good laugh, I'll read Mother Jones or watch MSNBC. But I think it's important to view the issues in the broadest reference plane. In fact, I think if you firmly believe in any issue, I always recommend that you read the opposite. And the reason for that is, I think most of the times it's going to merely reinforce your original point of view. But on that rare occasion, because there's an evolutionary byproduct to our thinking, sometimes you'll just change your mind. And I think either way, you have a larger and more comprehensive view of the issues. And the great thing about being in a democratic republic is that you have freedom and liberty. But with that comes an obligation and a responsibility. And that responsibility is to be informed. So my job as a political cartoonist is to sort of light a fire underneath you, to get you mad, or to make you really happy, but to get you engaged, because that's what makes America extraordinary. It's not extraordinary because of our government. America is extraordinary because of its people. So we spend our time as editorial cartoonists gathering information. We process the information to draw a conclusion, to draw a cartoon, and hopefully to draw blood. Now, I think there's a modern trend in editorial cartooning and journalism to make simple jokes about current affairs, sort of like the Tonight Show monologue. I don't do that. Humor without a substantive statement, I think, diminishes the importance of an editorial cartoon. An editorial cartoon isn't just a funny picture. It's a good editorial cartoon, I think, can be a fine instrument of journalism. And at times, I think it's sharp and refined. It's message cutting quickly to the point. At other times, it's blunt, with its dark imagery seizing the reader's attention. But as with any editorial, the cartoon has a point. I think that's the most important element of a political cartoon. You will look at my cartoons, and they may make you laugh, they may make you cry, they may make you angry, but there will always be a point to the cartoon. And I think a good editorial cartoon should not only be well researched, it has to be carefully contemplated. So sometimes, Helen will tell you, and Arthur will tell you, and I'll come up with 10 or 15 ideas a day. The hardest part of my job is deciding which one to do and which one not to do. And a good example of that is, remember Johnny Cochran, who defended the O.J. Simpson trial? When Johnny died, the first image that came to my mind was, Mr. Cochran at the gates of heaven, and St. Peter was saying, "I'm sorry, Johnny, if the halo don't fit, we don't admit." Now, that's a pretty straightforward cartoon. But in a closer examination of Johnny Cochran's career, what I found was a very generous man who was involved in his community, who was engaged in many wonderful charitable causes. And when it came down to it, I couldn't equate his entire life with one thing that he had done in his life. So I didn't do the cartoon. Another example is, remember when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded? Now, a lot of people thought that the reason behind that was because NASA was cutting corners and safety was one of the things that got cut out. Experts had said that NASA's efforts to curb spending had contributed to this safety problem. And so the image that came to my mind were the exploded shuttle Challenger with little pieces flying across the sky with a bubble coming out of it saying, "Man, these NASA cutbacks are killing us." Now it makes a very, very powerful point. But
Yeah.
7 American heroes died. And it wasn't worth overshadowing what these people had done to make that point. Now, editorial cartoons are sort of like the Super Bowl has ads. You've got about 2 or 3 seconds to capture the viewer's attention, and then about 5 seconds to sell your product or sell your point. And you don't want the controversy overshadowing the pitch that you're making. Because I'm a big believer in editorial cartooning as journalism, and I want to try to sell you to the product that I'm delivering, which is the truth. An editorial cartoon is not humorous for the sake of humor. It's not controversial for the sake of controversy. It's neither conservative nor liberal. Whether you agree with it philosophically or not, an editorial cartoon engages the reader in debate. It informs and it challenges, and it draws the reader into the democratic process.